The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest structure ever built by living hands. Its walls stretched upward for miles, made of crystal that sang with the light of captured stars. Thousands of alien representatives sat in floating seats arranged in a massive circle. At the center stood a small platform where speakers could address the most powerful beings in the known universe. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood on that platform and felt very small. She was 62 years old. Her black hair had turned gray at the temples. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the data tablet containing her speech. Around her, creatures of impossible beauty and terrifying power watched with eyes that glowed in colors humans could not name. The Valori floated in their crystal spheres. Their bodies were made of living light, and they had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 100,000 years. The Cathari sat in rows of armored shells, their insectoid faces showing no emotion. They controlled 40 star systems and had never lost a war. The Lumineth drifted like clouds of gentle radiance. They were peaceful, but even they looked at Elena with something close to pity. Humanity had joined the Galactic Concord 300 years ago. In all that time, they had never been treated as equals. Elena cleared her throat and began to speak. "Honored members of the Concord," she said. Her voice echoed in the vast chamber. "I come before you today to request aid. 3 of our colony worlds have fallen to the devouring. 17 billion human beings are dead." A ripple of movement passed through the assembly. The devouring was known to all of them. It was a swarm intelligence, a plague of living hunger that moved from world to world. It could not be reasoned with. It could not be stopped. It simply consumed everything in its path. "Our military forces are not strong enough to face this threat alone," Elena continued. "We ask the Concord for ships, for weapons, for soldiers. We ask you to honor the treaties of mutual defense that we all signed when humanity joined this great alliance." She stopped speaking. The silence that followed was worse than any noise. Then the laughter began. It started with the Cathari. Their mandibles clicked together in a sound like breaking glass. The Valori joined in, their crystalline bodies ringing with amusement. Even some of the Lumineth flickered in patterns that Elena knew meant mockery. The High Archon of the Valori floated forward. His form was beautiful and terrible, a being of pure light shaped like a tall humanoid figure with wings of frozen flame. "Ambassador Vasquez," he said. His voice was like music, but the words were cruel. "Your species has been part of the Concord for 3 centuries. In that time, what have you contributed? Your ships are slow. Your weapons are primitive. Your lifespans are so short that we must meet new ambassadors every few decades." Elena felt her face grow hot with shame and anger. "The devouring has destroyed 18 species before you," the Archon continued. "Species that were older and stronger than humanity will ever be. Perhaps this is simply the natural order of things. Perhaps your kind was never meant to last." "We are asking for help," Elena said. Her voice cracked slightly. "We are asking you to save billions of innocent lives." The Archon's light flickered in what might have been a smile. "Perhaps," he said, "your species should retreat to your birth world and wait for extinction with dignity. It would be the kindest thing you could do for yourselves." Elena looked around the chamber. She searched for one friendly face, one sign of support. The Lumineth would not meet her eyes. The Cathari had already turned away, discussing trade agreements among themselves. The other species were leaving their seats, bored with the entertainment. "We will vote," the Archon announced. "All those in favor of providing military aid to the human species?" Not a single hand or tentacle or tendril rose. "All those opposed?" The chamber filled with raised appendages. "The motion fails," the Archon said. "Humanity will receive no aid from the Galactic Concord. This session is concluded." Elena stood alone on the platform as the great hall emptied around her. Her legs felt weak. Her heart pounded in her chest. She had failed. She had begged for the lives of her people, and the galaxy had laughed in her face. She thought of the colony worlds that had already fallen. She thought of the children who had screamed as the swarm descended. She thought of the billions more who would die because these ancient, powerful beings could not be bothered to help. Something changed in Elena Vasquez at that moment. The fear and shame burned away, and something harder took their place. She pulled out her personal communicator and typed a message. It was short, only a few words, but it would change the course of galactic history. "Project Prometheus is authorized," she wrote. "They have made their choice. Now we make ours." She sent the message to Earth. Then she walked out of the great hall with her head held high. The Veilori Archon watched her go. He felt a tiny flicker of something he could not name. For just a moment, the old and powerful being felt almost uncomfortable. But the feeling passed quickly. The humans were nothing. They would be dead within 20 years, consumed by the devouring like so many species before them. He had more important matters to attend to. Far away on a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star, the message arrived. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, scientists and soldiers read those words and understood what they meant. The time for begging was over. The time for building had begun. The facility had no name on any official record. It existed in the hollowed-out heart of a mountain on Mars, 3 miles beneath the rusty surface. The corridors were lit by soft blue light, and armed guards stood at every corner. Only 200 people in all of human space knew this place existed. Dr. Marcus Chen had lived here for 7 years. He was a thin man with tired eyes and hands that never stopped moving. His hair had gone white from stress, though he was only 45. He had not seen the sun in so long that his skin had turned pale as paper. None of that mattered now. Nothing mattered except the hologram floating in front of him. The blueprints filled the entire room. Lines of light traced patterns so complex that they hurt the eye. Numbers scrolled in languages that no living species could read. The design showed something that should not exist, something that broke every law of physics the galaxy had ever agreed upon. Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood beside him, her arms crossed over her chest. She was 70 years old, but her eyes were sharp as knives. She had commanded human fleets for 40 years. She had never lost a battle, though she had never won one against the elder species either. Humans simply did not have the technology to compete. Until now. "Tell me again," the Admiral said. "Where did we find this?" Marcus pointed at the hologram. 15 years ago, a mining ship at the edge of known space found a derelict vessel. It was drifting between stars, far from any trade route or inhabited system. The ship was old, not just old in the way the Veilori are old. We are talking about millions of years. "The precursors," Tanaka said. Marcus nodded. The precursors were the great mystery of the galaxy. Every species had found traces of them. Ancient ruins on dead worlds. Fragments of technology that no one could understand. The legends said they had created all life in the galaxy, seeding worlds with the building blocks of evolution. Then they had vanished. No one knew why. "The derelict ship contained a complete database," Marcus continued. "It took us a decade just to learn how to read it. But when we did, we found this." He gestured at the blueprints. The precursors called it the Titan. Tanaka studied the design. She did not understand the technical details, but she understood the shape of it. It was not a ship. It was not a weapon in any normal sense. It was something else entirely. "How big would it be?" she asked. "About the size of Europa," Marcus said quietly. "One of Jupiter's moons." Tanaka said nothing for a long moment. "The elder species know about this, don't they?" she finally said. Marcus nodded again. "They found fragments of these designs thousands of years ago. The Velori, the Cathari, all of them, but they declared it impossible. They said no species could ever gather enough resources, solve enough problems, or work together long enough to build such a thing, so they locked the fragments away and forgot about them. But we have the complete blueprint. Yes, Marcus said. We have everything. Every equation, every material specification, every step of the construction process. He paused. It will take everything we have, Admiral. Every resource. Every mind. Every pair of hands in human space. And even then, I do not know if we can do it. Tanaka turned away from the hologram and walked to a small window. Through the thick glass, she could see the Martian landscape stretching away into the distance. Red rocks under a pink sky, a world that humans had struggled for centuries to make their own. The devouring will reach Earth in 18 years, she said. Maybe less. I know. The Concord has abandoned us. We have no allies. No one is coming to save us. I know, Marcus said again. Tanaka pressed her hand against the cold glass. Somewhere out there, beyond the sky, the swarm was moving toward them. A wave of hunger and death that had already consumed entire civilizations. The elder species think we are weak, she said. They think we are primitive. They think we will simply lie down and die. She turned back to face Marcus. Her eyes were burning with something fierce and unbreakable. They are wrong, she said. We are human. We do not lie down. We do not give up. We fight until our last breath, and then we fight some more. She pointed at the hologram. Can we build it? Marcus looked at the impossible design. He thought of all the reasons it could not be done, the resources they did not have, the sciences they had not yet invented, the time they did not possess. Then he thought of his daughter on Earth. He thought of the billions of children who would die if they did nothing. He thought of the laughter in the Galactic Council and the contempt in the Violori Archon's voice. I do not know, he said honestly, but I know we have to try. Tanaka nodded slowly. Then she spoke the words that would reshape history. 18 years, she said. Let us get to work. Within a month, the orders went out to every human world. The great work had begun. The elder species noticed nothing. They were too busy laughing at the mud dwellers to see what was happening in the shadows. They would not laugh for much longer. 15 years passed, and the galaxy forgot about humanity. The elder species had other concerns. Trade disputes between the Cathari and the Velori occupied the Galactic Council for months at a time. New worlds were discovered and colonized. Old alliances shifted and changed. The small blue species from the outer rim was simply not important enough to remember. When they did think about humans, they saw exactly what they expected to see. Observation probes sent to human space returned with images of decay. Space stations hung dark and abandoned. Colony worlds showed crumbling cities and empty streets. The proud human fleet, never impressive to begin with, had dwindled to a handful of rusty patrol ships. The Velori High Archon reviewed the reports with satisfaction. The mud dwellers were dying, just as he had predicted. The devouring was only 3 years away from reaching Earth, and humanity was already collapsing under the pressure. A mercy, really, he told his advisors. Better to fade away quietly than to suffer the swarm's hunger. The Cathari began drawing up plans to claim human territory after the extinction. The resources would be valuable. The location was strategic. There was no point in letting good real estate go to waste. The Lumineth, to their credit, felt some guilt. A few of their scholars proposed sending humanitarian aid, but the proposal was voted down. Why waste resources on a dying species? None of them saw the truth. Behind the holographic images of decay, humanity was more alive than ever before. The abandoned space stations were not empty. They were factories, hidden behind projected illusions. The crumbling cities were masks over underground construction sites. The rusty patrol ships were decoys, while the real fleet trained in the darkness between stars. Every human being in existence had a job to do. On Earth, children went to schools where they learned mathematics so advanced that conquered universities did not teach it. By the age of 12, young humans could solve equations that would have confused Valori scientists. By 15, they were designing components for the great machine. Artists and musicians did not simply create beauty. They designed targeting systems and sensor arrays using creativity to solve problems that pure logic could not crack. Poets wrote the code that would become the Titan's artificial mind, filling it with humanity's dreams and hopes and fierce determination. Farmers grew strange new crops in modified fields. These were not ordinary plants. They were bioneural components, living circuits that would form part of the machine's thinking systems. Every wheat field, every rice paddy, every vegetable garden contributed something to the great work. In the asteroid belts, entire mountains of rock were hollowed out and transformed into refineries. Miners worked in shifts that never ended, extracting metals and minerals that would become the Titan's bones. Many of them never saw their families again. They sent messages home when they could, but mostly they simply worked. On the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, hidden construction yards took shape. Massive pieces of the machine were assembled in secret, tested in the endless cold of space, then hidden again behind clouds of carefully positioned dust. Dr. Marcus Chen did not sleep anymore. He could not remember the last time he had closed his eyes for more than a few minutes. His body was breaking down, but he refused to stop. Too many people were counting on him. Too much depended on getting every calculation exactly right. Admiral Tanaka visited the hidden shipyards every month. She watched the Titan grow, piece by piece, from an impossible dream into an impossible reality. Sometimes she stood alone on observation decks and stared at the emerging shape with tears in her eyes. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Ambassador Elena Vasquez, now 77 years old, remained at the Galactic Council. She played her part perfectly. She looked tired and defeated. She spoke in a weak voice about the difficulties humanity faced. She never mentioned the great work. She never let anything slip. But sometimes, late at night, she smiled in her quarters and whispered to herself, "They have no idea. They have no idea what we are." The devouring moved closer with each passing month. Reports came in of worlds at the edge of human space being consumed. Billions of lives vanished into the swarm's endless hunger. Humanity mourned. Humanity raged. But humanity did not stop working. In the 15th year, the final piece of the Titan was completed. Deep inside Europa, the frozen moon of Jupiter, the machine waited in darkness. It was the size of a small world. Its hull was made of metals that did not exist in nature, forged in conditions that should have been impossible to create. Its eyes were made from captured singularities, tiny black holes held in perfect balance. Its wings were crystallized starlight, frozen energy that could unfold across thousands of miles. Its mind was an artificial intelligence built from the thoughts of poets and the dreams of children, a consciousness unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. On the day the construction was finished, Marcus Chen finally allowed himself to sleep. He collapsed in his quarters and did not wake for 3 days. When he opened his eyes, his assistant was waiting with the news. The devouring had entered the Sol system. The time for building was over. The time for awakening had begun. The swarm came like a tide of living darkness. From a distance, the devouring looked like a cloud of black smoke moving between the stars. But as it grew closer, the true horror became clear. Trillions of organisms flew together in perfect formation. Each creature was the size of a small ship, covered in hard black shells and filled with nothing but hunger. They had no culture. They had no art. They had no mercy. They existed only to consume. The swarm passed Neptune first, then Uranus, then Saturn. The planets meant nothing to the devouring. They sought warm bodies and living flesh. They sought Earth. On the third moon of Jupiter, the Galactic Concorde's observation fleet waited at a safe distance. 12 Valori cruisers, their crystal hulls gleaming with captured starlight. 20 Cathari destroyers armed with weapons that could crack planets. A dozen Lumineth vessels, officially present to bear witness to humanity's final hours. The Valori High Archon watched from his flagship. He had come personally to see the end of the Mud Dwellers. It would make an excellent educational broadcast for younger species, a reminder of what happened to those who reached above their station. The human fleet is forming a defensive line near Jupiter, his sensor operator reported. 47 vessels, all outdated, all damaged. The Archon felt something close to pity. They are brave, I suppose, foolishly brave, but bravery will not stop the devouring. The human ships hung in space like toys waiting to be broken. Their weapons were primitive. Their shields were weak. The swarm would sweep them away in minutes, and then Earth would fall. On the bridge of the human flagship, Admiral Tanaka stood perfectly still. She was 88 years old now. Her hair was white as snow. Her body was frail, but her eyes burned with fire. "All ships," she said calmly. "Hold position. Wait for my signal." The comm channel crackled. Captain Rodriguez, commanding the destroyer Defiance, spoke with fear in his voice. "Admiral, the swarm is 3 minutes out. We cannot hold against that. There are too many of them." "I know," Tanaka said. "That is not your job today." "Then what is our job?" Tanaka smiled. It was the smile of someone who had kept a secret for 15 years and was finally about to reveal it. "Your job," she said, "is to watch." She pressed a button on her command console. A signal traveled at the speed of light, crossing the empty space between the fleet and Jupiter's frozen moon. It reached the facility hidden beneath Europa's ice shell. Deep in the darkness, something ancient and terrible and beautiful heard the call and opened its eyes. The Concorde sensors detected the energy surge first. The readings made no sense. The power levels were impossible. The Valori operators checked their equipment, certain there must be an error. There was no error. Europa's surface cracked. Great sheets of ice, miles thick, shattered like glass. Steam and water exploded outward into space. And from the heart of the moon, light began to shine. The Titan rose. It climbed through the destroyed moon like a god emerging from a frozen ocean. Its body was made of metals that gleamed with inner fire. Its wings unfolded, spreading across thousands of miles, catching the distant sunlight and turning it into weapons. Its eyes burned with captured singularities, twin points of terrible darkness that saw everything. It was the size of a small world. It was the shape of hope. The Valori Archon watched with his mouth hanging open. His crystal form trembled with emotions he had not felt in 10,000 years. Fear, shock, disbelief. "That is not possible," he whispered. "That cannot be possible." But it was. The Titan's voice spoke. It broadcast on every frequency, in every language, across the entire galaxy. Every sensor, every communication device, every mind capable of hearing language received its words. "I am humanity's answer," the voice said. It was not cold or mechanical. It was warm and alive and filled with something like love. "I am the Titan, and I am awake." The devouring paused. In all its existence, the swarm had never hesitated. It had consumed worlds. It had destroyed civilizations. It had felt nothing but hunger and the satisfaction of feeding. Now, for the first time, it felt something new: fear. The swarm tried to turn, to flee back into the darkness between stars. But it was too late. The Titan raised its hand. Light brighter than a sun erupted from its palm. But this was not a weapon of destruction. It was something far more powerful. It was a weapon of change. The light washed over the devouring like a wave. Where it touched, the swarm organisms stopped moving. Their shells cracked, their forms twisted. Their minds, once empty of everything but hunger, suddenly filled with new thoughts, confusion, wonder, peace. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, 1 billion creatures floated in space where the devouring had been. They were no longer monsters. They were something new, something gentle. Their hunger was gone, replaced by a simple desire to tend gardens and grow living things. The Titan had not destroyed them. It had healed them. Admiral Tanaka fell to her knees on the bridge of her flagship. Tears streamed down her wrinkled face. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." And across the galaxy, 17 elder species watched in stunned silence as everything they thought they knew about humanity crumbled to dust. The silence after the battle was the loudest thing the Valori High Archon had ever heard. He stood on the bridge of his crystal cruiser, surrounded by his officers and advisors. None of them could speak. None of them could move. They simply stared at the impossible sight before them. Where the devouring had been, 1 billion transformed creatures now drifted peacefully. They moved slowly, gently, like fish swimming through an invisible ocean. Their shells had changed from black to soft green. Their eyes, once filled with mindless hunger, now glowed with quiet awareness. And behind them, vast as a world, beautiful as a dream, the Titan waited. The Archon had lived for 12,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched stars die and new ones born. He had believed with absolute certainty that the universe held no more surprises for him. He had been wrong. "All Concord vessels," a voice said over the communication channel. It was the Titan's voice, warm and powerful and terrifyingly calm. "Remain where you are. Do not attempt to flee. We wish to speak with you." The Cathari commander reached for his weapons console. His first officer grabbed his arm. "Do not be foolish," the officer hissed. "Did you see what it did to the swarm? We would not last a second." The commander looked at the Titan's burning eyes and slowly moved his hand away from the weapons. On the observation deck of the great machine, 3 people stood together. Ambassador Elena Vasquez was 92 years old now. Her body was bent with age, but she stood as straight as she could. Her white hair was pulled back from her face, and her eyes were clear and sharp. Beside her stood Dr. Marcus Chen, looking like a ghost of the man he had once been. The years of work had taken everything from him. But he was smiling. Admiral Tanaka stood on Elena's other side. She leaned on a cane, but her voice was strong when she spoke. "They are waiting for us," she said. "The Concord fleet. They are terrified." Elena nodded. "Good. They should be." She stepped forward and placed her hand on a control panel. The Titan's sensors zoomed in on the Valori flagship. She could see the Archon standing on his bridge, trembling with fear. 15 years ago, he had laughed at her. He had told her that humanity should go home and die with dignity. He had denied her people the help that might have saved billions of lives. Elena remembered every word. She remembered the shame and the rage and the helplessness she had felt. She also remembered what she had learned in the years since. "Open a channel," she said quietly. "Let everyone hear this." Not just the Concord, the entire galaxy. The Titan obeyed. Across thousands of star systems, billions of beings turned their attention to the broadcast. Elena spoke. "I am Ambassador Elena Vasquez of the human species," she said. 15 years ago, I stood before the Galactic Council and begged for help. My people were dying. The devouring was coming to destroy us. And you laughed. She paused. The silence was absolute. You called us mud dwellers. You called us primitive. You said we should accept extinction with dignity. You refused to lift a single finger to save our children. On the Valori flagship, the Archon closed his eyes. He knew what was coming. He had seen this story play out 1,000 times in galactic history. The weak became strong. The strong took revenge. It was the way of things. He prepared himself for death. But Elena was not finished. We had every reason to hate you, she continued. We had every reason to build a weapon that would destroy your fleets and burn your worlds. We could have done it. The Titan is powerful enough to end every civilization in this galaxy. The Archon waited for the killing blow. But we did not build a weapon of revenge, Elena said. Her voice was soft but firm. We built a protector. We built a healer. We built something that transforms enemies into friends instead of destroying them. She turned to look directly at the Archon through the sensors. We are not you, she said. We do not destroy those who wronged us. We do not mock the weak. We remember what that felt like, and we will never make another species feel the way you made us feel. The Archon opened his eyes. He did not understand. What do you want? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Elena smiled. It was not a smile of triumph or cruelty. It was the smile of a grandmother looking at a frightened child. We want what we always wanted, she said. A seat at the table, to be treated as equals, to be respected, not mocked. She straightened her old back and looked out at the stars. But hear this, Concord. The age of elder species looking down upon the young is over. You will never again deny help to those in need. You will never again laugh at the desperate. And if you try, we will not destroy you. Her eyes hardened. We will simply build something else. The Galactic Council met in emergency session 3 hours later. The vote to grant humanity full and equal membership passed without a single objection. The treaties were rewritten. The old hierarchies were dismantled. A new age had begun. The Titan took its place in orbit around Earth. It never threatened anyone. It never fired its weapons in anger. It simply existed, a silent guardian watching over the small blue world that had built it. Dr. Marcus Chen died peacefully in his sleep 6 months later. He was buried on Mars, in the shadow of the mountain where the first blueprints had been decoded. His tombstone bore only 2 words: he built. Admiral Tanaka lived to be 103. She spent her final years teaching young officers that true strength came not from weapons, but from the courage to show mercy. Elena Vasquez returned to the Galactic Council one last time before she retired. She stood on the same platform where she had once begged for help. The same crystal walls rose around her. The same alien faces watched from their floating seats, but everything was different now. Thank you, she said simply, for finally listening. She walked out of the Great Hall for the last time. Behind her, the representatives of 100 species rose to their feet in respect. And across the galaxy, in academies and schools and gathering places, young species whispered a new phrase to each other. It became a saying, a proverb, a reminder of what the humans had taught them. Never underestimate the small ones. Never mock the weak. They are the ones who might build a god.